Okay, today's the day. It's time for trial of truth here with this plane. I wanted to give you some information before we take it out and perform the maiden launch. I did not go with the control surface deflection that I spoke about in the last video. I went with 15 because it just looked, especially on the ailerons, it just looked like it was too much. But on the ailerons, I have 15 millimeter of surface deflection up and down. Elevator is 22 millimeters. Rudder is 25 millimeters. I think I have Expo of 25. I think on all the control surfaces. I'm going to start with the CG 50 millimeters back from the leading edge. My all-up weight is 667 grams. I was trying to get it down to 650, didn't quite make it. So I know that when I balance it at 50 millimeters, it looks a little tail heavy. Now I'm going to wait until I perform the maiden launch and see, because maybe I need to have the CG further back than 50 millimeters. I don't know. I'm just kind of guessing on where the CG needs to be. So I'm going to start at 50 millimeters and toss it in the air and see if it's nose heavy, if it's tail heavy, or if that's where it needs to be, or if it needs to be back maybe 55 millimeters. So at 55 millimeters, it balances, neutral, where I've got everything right now. At 50, it feels a little tail heavy. So we'll see. I won't know until I put it in the air. But we'll go out and we'll try that, and if it's nose heavy or if it's tail heavy, then we'll adjust and then throw it in the air again. So I will see you out of the field. Alright, maiden launch of the Fun Cub 1100. It's a little breezier out here than I would hope for, but it is what it is. Yeah, she is definitely tail heavy. I was afraid with that lighter weight motor in there that it was going to be a bit tail heavy. Throttle back a little bit. I'm definitely going to have to put some nose weight in it. But she's flying. My Fun Cub is flying. I think I've got maximum down elevator in it now. Yeah, look at that tail drop. Looks like I'm going to have to go to the hardware store and get that other motor on the front of it. It's 10 grams heavier. I hope that will get it balanced. That is a nice looking plane though, isn't it? Kind of a handful being tail heavy. Especially since I'm not used to flying planes this large. So we'll cruise around with it a little bit.
I'm glad that with it being tail heavy that I've got tons of thrust in this plane. Get me out of trouble. But it looks like it's going to have very good slow flight capability, even without the flaps. That's pretty awesome. Alright, we'll run it through a battery pack, even though it's tail heavy. Look at that tail drop in the corner in the turn. Even though it's tail heavy, we'll take it through a battery pack here. And then I'll put it in the air again. I'll see if I can get some nose weight on it. And there's my 4-minute alarm. The all-up weight on this plane is 667 grams. Yeah, go around. Like I said, I'm glad it has plenty of power. Alright, throttle back. It's got so much power, I'm really having to throttle back to bring it in. Hey! At least it stayed on its wheels. Alright, so the maiden flight of the Fun Cub 1100. It's tail heavy. And it's breezy out here. The best of both worlds. But it flew, you know, even tail heavy around pretty well. So let me look in my bag of tricks here and see if I can find something to put some weight on this nose, and then we'll put it back in the air again. Okay, flight number 2 of the Fun Cub 1100. Of course, I couldn't get it at the very nose, so the weight that I added, I would estimate probably about 20 grams to the battery bay, and that seems to get it balanced right there on that 50 millimeters that I was shooting for. I knew it was probably going to be a little tail heavy when I brought it out, but that was considerably tail heavy. Alright, so I've taken the trim out of my elevator. Let's get it in the air and see what we have now. Throttle back a little bit. Of course, I haven't done any trimming on it yet, but yeah, that looks a lot better. Much better. Throttle back some more. I'm down to about, I think I'm down to about 50% throttle now. And it's windy. Sweet. Yeah, that is handling a lot better now. Let's see how it reacts in this turn. Yeah, I'm not seeing the tail drop like I did before. Nice. Wish I had that weight right on the nose. Isn't that a nice looking plane though? I'm just kind of running racetracks with it right now to get used to it. That is a fun Cub. I have a hard time getting out of the throttle though. I think it needs a little differential in the ailerons. It seems to want to push the nose out a little bit in a turn, unless you add quite a bit of rudder. Isn't that a sweet looking plane though? Cool. I'm not used to flying planes this large, so I'm a little nervous on the sticks right now. But the next time we bring it out, we'll see if we can do some aerobatics with it. And hopefully I will have my motor of choice in here. Next time I bring it out, I'll have the Racerstar BR 2216 1400 kV motor. I think that's, you know, having that additional weight on the nose, plus the fact it's going to pull, you know, so much fewer amps than the current power system. All right, so let's bring it in again. See if I can bring it in without stalling it or nosing it over. Oh man, I tell you, that makes it easy. And I am on, because of the direction that the wind is coming from, this is one of the roughest areas that I have to land in. Love those big wheels. That came in nice and smooth and slow. So I'll meet you back at the HQ and I'll let you know what I think of this plane. See you later.
Okay, so what did you guys think? Now I didn't do anything crazy with it. I didn't do any aerobatics or anything. I just wanted to test out the plane. The additional weight, I'll show you what I put in there. This was the heaviest thing I had. It's a solid steel punch. And I basically embedded it in packing tape and put it in the battery bay. This weighs 44 grams. So I added an additional 44 grams of weight to the battery bay to get that balanced at 50 millimeters and back from the leading edge, and it felt pretty good balance with a neutral balance at 50 millimeters. Now I'm used to flying planes with a neutral balance, so I would say if you set your CG between 45 to 50 millimeters back from the leading edge of the wing, I think you're going to have a successful maiden flight. The control surface deflection that I had in there for the maiden flight felt good. There was nothing that felt abrupt. I was worried about the elevator with 25 millimeters of deflection up and 25 millimeters of deflection down. I was afraid with 25 on the Expo that the tail was going to be really twitchy, but it wasn't. So that kind of surprised me. You saw how tail heavy it was on the maiden flight, and every time that I would make a turn, the tail would just drop. So I was glad that I had all the power and thrust in this plane for the maiden flight, because it kept me out of trouble. When the tail started dropping, I could just power right out of it, no problem. The second flight went very, very well. Now the reason that I was just running a racetrack over there and testing this plane out was because I had my Super Cub out doing some practice flights with it before I threw this one in the air. I was on my 7th battery pack and was doing a loop with it. And 30 or 40 feet in the air, the wind just must have been, there must have been competing winds, because halfway through the loop, it just cartwheeled my Super Cub, and I could not catch it before it hit the ground. So I think I'm going to be retiring that airframe. It hit pretty hard, and I didn't want, after that, I did not want that to happen to this plane on the first outing out there. And it's always a guess when I get out there. You know, the winds up above are so different than what I'm feeling on the ground, and you never know what you have until you get up to that altitude. So I tried to keep this plane fairly low, and you know, was ready on the sticks if some weird wind came through there that hit the plane, you know, 20 or 30 feet up. So luckily that didn't happen. Unfortunately, it happened with my Super Cub. So now what I want to do is I want to go out and get the plane all trimmed out, test it with the aileron authority, elevator authority, rudder authority, get all my control surface deflections set up the way I like to fly it, because I want to be able to do aerobatics with it. So I'm going to get it set up that way. It's going to have plenty of power to be able to do that. I'm thinking what I'm going to do is, you know, with the bigger motor, it's going to be 10 grams heavier all the way to the front of the nose. My speed controller right now is aft of the just aft of the CG. So what I'm thinking of doing is like what I did with the receiver. I think I'm going to get a piece of plywood and I'm going to build a shelf right here behind the firewall, and I'm going to move the speed controller all the way forward and put it underneath the shelf, and then put the battery on top of the shelf. The plywood will add a little bit of weight. I will have an additional 10 grams from the bigger motor and prop. The speed controller weighs, I think, about 24 grams. So moving the speed controller all the way forward of the CG, I think is going to get the balance right where I need it. At most, I may have to add 10 grams, maybe 15 grams of weight to the battery bay, and if that's the case, I'll just take a steel washer and I'll glue it right behind the firewall to get it balanced right where I need to, with the motor prop, LiPo, speed controller, receiver, everything that I'm using in it right now. But did you see that second landing? I mean, this plane really made me look like I knew what I was doing out there when I brought it in for a landing, especially on that rough side road right there. It was so narrow. I was a little worried about that, but it just glided in and set down so soft. I was really impressed with the plane, and especially with its slow flight capability, and I don't even have the flaps on it yet. So this is definitely going to be a short takeoff and landing plane once I put the flaps in it. So I want to get it all trimmed out and get everything set up before I mess with the flaps. I want to get it flying exactly the way I want, so I can better show the capability of the plane. And then after I get that done, then I'm going to put in the flaps and we'll take it out and test it with the flaps. But I'm gonna wait for that video before I make my conclusion on this plane, since I really haven't had a chance to test it out in the air yet. But this plane is really looking good, especially with the cost of the components to build it. It's a pretty inexpensive plane, especially for as large as it is. And I think this plane is going to be an absolute blast, but time will tell. So stay tuned. In video number 4, review video number 4, I will give you my conclusion on this. Hopefully I will have the other motor and prop and everything in there, have it balanced better, and have it all trimmed out, and then we'll see what it can do. But thanks for watching, and I will see you in the air.